Welcome. Today's lesson is about cell boundaries. This last week we've been talking about cell organelles and what makes them different from one another and what their function is. We kind of went really fast through them. We're going to go back and start the rest of the class is really focusing on starting to describe these organelles at a deeper level. And really the first one we look at are cell membranes and a little bit of cell walls, but mostly we're going to focus on cell membranes. Now, this is the first time you've ever done an online note session like this, so I'm going to take it nice and slow and talk through what we actually need to be writing down. Also, I'm going to have you guys have fill-in-the-blank notes that should be in front of you right now. So, cell membranes really are selectively permeable. We learned that last week. Selectively permeable means it knows and regulates what enters and leaves the cell. You might also hear semi-permeable. It means the same exact thing. I go with selectively permeable in my head also when I teach because it kind of allows me and my students to see, okay, it allows or chooses what's going through and what's not going through. The cell membrane also has protection and support for the cell. It kind of does this by going through the regulating what enters and leaves, because by protecting the cell, by doing that, things that shouldn't be getting in don't get in, and things that should be getting in do get in. So it's kind of a protection by default. The support part of it is the outer membrane of animal cells, and it kind of just gives support to what's going on inside. It's made up of something called a lipid bilayer, or a phospholipid bilayer. You'll hear both of them. The lipid bilayer, obviously if you break down that word, you see that lipid, that's a fat, we know that, we learned that earlier this year. Bilayer, bi meaning two, so there's two layers. So lipid bilayer has two layers on top of each other, and it has lipids in the middle of these two layers to help protect the membrane and the cell. We'll talk about that in the next slide. Now this lipid bilayer also gives it a very flexible structure so it can change shape. So unlike plant cells, which are going to have very, very rigid cell walls, animal cells or cells that just have a cell membrane are able to change shape depending on their surroundings. Now this lipid bilayer also has proteins and carbohydrates on the cell membrane sticking out. The proteins are almost like windows and doors that let in certain objects that can't get through the layer usually. So these channels are used almost as in like gateways or little highways for certain objects. The carbohydrates are used for communication. It allows the cell to communicate with other cells around them, also with the surroundings, and to understand what surroundings they're in. This is a picture of a lipid bilayer, and this is the picture that you're going to be writing down for your project, and this is also a picture that I want you to be writing down in your notes. You can see right here the orange balls up here, they are phosphates. They are hydrophilic, meaning that they like water. These guys are polar, they like water. Liking water sounds kind of weird, and it kind of sounds like when we talk about things in our personal lives, we talk about like and don't like, but in science, so when you like water, it means that you can usually dissolve in water, or that water is attracted to you because of your molecules and how you're made up. The middle right here are hydrophobic, meaning that they hate water. So these membranes have a section that like water and a section that don't like water, which it really does help them be selectively permeable and to not allow just anything in. If it was all polar, then anything that was polar as well could get through without any hindrance. And if it was all nonpolar, things that were nonpolar or hydrophobic could get through without any hindrance. So it's actually important that it has both of these features. You can also see the protein channels here. It's almost like a little door, lets things in. Sometimes they have locks and keys that only certain molecules can get in. You also see a carbohydrate chain coming up that is for communication, to tell other cells different things, or for the current cell to know where it actually is. Now really quickly, we're going to hit on the cell wall. This is a very quick explanation. A cell wall's main function is to provide support and protection for the cell. It's only really found in plant cells and in some other unique cells throughout the kingdoms. But really, we talk about cell walls, we're talking about plant cells. They're made up of cellulose. Cellulose is a very, very tough substance. We can't actually digest it. It's very hard for most animals to digest. That's why the animals that do eat grass and other vegetation, they usually have multiple stomachs or different ways to digest. But the cell wall is not as complex as a cell membrane. You can almost picture a cell wall as like just a giant brick wall, while a cell membrane might be a wall, but it has doors and windows and options to go in and out. A cell wall is kind of just a wall. Well, that kind of finishes up our little lecture here. If you have any questions, you may email me or get a hold of me. Make sure you watch the next 2 videos. The 2 videos are very important. I want you to make sure you're taking notes. Make sure you take notes, especially the first one when they're talking about the phospholipid bilayer. It's important to understand what makes the phospholipid a phospholipid. So, that being said, I will see you guys in class. Have a nice day.